everybody that I've talked to, at least right now, is everybody feels like they're already behind. So behind in the process, so behind in learning what's going on.
Nowadays, when people are talking 5-10 years out, I'm like, we have no idea what it's going to be like by then, and things are changing so fast. So
kind of philosophy we've always had here is if we're not changing, something's wrong.
What's the worst accounting or tech buzzword that you would be thrilled if you didn't hear it for the rest of 2025?
AI native accounting is brought to you by Digits, the world's first autonomous general ledger. Ditch the tedium and empower your AI native firm with Digits. Automate bookkeeping, reporting, client collaboration, and more, so you can focus on what truly matters. Visit digits.com to start your free trial today and see why the future of accounting starts with Digits.
Welcome to the AI Native Accounting Podcast presented by Digits. I'm your host, Kacee Johnson, principal at Be Radical. And today I am joined by Dan Luthi, the Chief Operating Officer of IgniteSpot, a firm known for pushing innovation and advisory first strategies. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, thank you so much, Kacee. I appreciate the invitation. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Oh, this is going to be fun. And we kind of saw each other in passing last month at the Scaling New Heights conference, but I didn't get to grab you. So now I get to. This is great.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been a hectic couple of months, I think, for both of us. Been a lot going on, but glad we could finally connect.
Absolutely. All exciting stuff. So today we're going to get into some real talk with Dan on AI use in firms, what he's hearing from his teams in terms of reactions to AI and tech. Some different experiments, as well as where Dan draws the line with AI. So before we dive in, Dan, tell us a little about IgniteSpot's journey and business model. Does it align with the original vision for the firm?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Our core principle has always stayed the same, which has been focused on providing actionable insights for small business based on their financial data. But how we got there has changed pretty heavily. When I first started with the firm 15 years ago, the firm had been running for 2 years before I got here, very much in person with every client that we worked with. We were really focused here here I live in Utah. We were really focused on the Utah kind of climate when it came to customers and things like that. Everybody had an in-person visit. We had mileage that customers used to reimburse us for and things like that. And as over the next kind of 2 years, we made a big shift to where we kind of got away. We actually got away really heavily from the in-person function and started using technology to work with our clients much more. And since then, it shifted heavily into the technology side and using it to kind of enable the services and the interaction with our customers. And we went nationwide after that. And it kind of ever since then, over the last 10, 12 years, it's been much more focused on tech and human interaction and how that provides the details for our customers.
And we're going to get into that about the tech and the human layer here.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So I can remember vividly the very first time that I was introduced to generative AI. I was at the digital CPA conference that I used to run, and Aaron Harris, the CTO of Sage, was one of our keynotes. And ChatGPT had literally just came out, and he asked it on the spot, create a poem about accounting in Yeats tone, which I love because I was an English lit major. And 2 months later, I was completely immersed in the technology and launching this massive generative AI initiative. So I'm curious if you can remember the first time that you really saw something and it was impacted, you were impacted by it and said, okay, this is different. This is special.
Yeah, we've had experience over the years using AI in a couple of different spaces, but when it comes to true generative AI, probably very similar to you in the timeline of really within the last kind of 12, 18, 24 months, we've had tiptoed into every aspect of it, or at least from there. And for me, it was, I think I started honestly with summarize my meeting notes or something like that. And to that extent, and the fact that it was able to consolidate it in a very efficient, very organized manner was like, okay, great. Like this is really going to start shifting the way that we interact with our clients and the way that we interact specifically with communication at that point in time. And it's just been a ride ever since. I mean, But we started with AI actually about 2017. We started 2017, 2018. We started working with a software company that brought some AI into the accounts payable space, and really got a chance to dive into them and really started to see a huge shift in the time consumption it took us to process AP and things like that. And we've been kind of just waiting ever since then to really start getting, hopefully that everything, all the rest of the technology caught up to them, because it's been it made such a big impact for our firm with utilizing that tool before they kind of moved up market from small business into enterprise, and we kind of got left behind. But it's all coming back, which is great.
Yeah. And that's an interesting question right there, is like, when do you hop on and really take advantage of the benefits of it without feeling like a guinea pig or like it's not quite mature yet, you know?
Yeah.
I'm
That,
curious. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say that's a tough question to ask because it's changing so rapidly right now. And I think everybody that I've talked to, at least right now, is everybody feels like they're already behind, so behind in the process, so behind in learning what's going on. And I think our first experience of testing it several years ago, I was super excited, super engaged in what was going on, but the reality was the margin wasn't there for the vendor we were working with for them to work with small business. And so after about a year and a half, 2 years, they shifted market and went bigger volume and everything like that. It kind of made me much more not leery of kind of where the tools were going, but much more aware that before we start fully committing to an application across all of our customers, we really need to make sure we understand the vision and direction of the application before we go all in, because it can be too risky and too difficult for your workflow as a firm who's trying to maintain margin and also train your staff in the right direction, to kind of keep yourself from running into those snags of having to unbolt and rebolt on a new tool or return back to a previous tool that you were using before.
Well, I applaud you for Ignite Spot being an early adopter. It sounds like a very healthy balance between evaluating and implementing as it matures, but not waiting too long and then being a laggard. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Haven't always been that way, I'll tell you that. When we first got started, or when I first started kind of in this operations role, it was anything that it came. I come back from a conference and my team hated it because it was like, we're going to try this tool and we're going to try this tool and we're going to try this tool. And it kind of got to a point where we realized that it is too much to shift your entire organization on a whim. You really have to think through the experience of your customers, your staff, the training and implementation. No matter how much I'm excited about it, you really have to build a strategy to help your team adopt in the right way. And we just weren't ready for that in a lot of cases. And so we've taken a much different approach now, and it's worked out quite well for us in the process.
Is there, because I do want to get into a little bit about your team and what their reactions are. Do they ever feel threatened by a tech maybe taking over a portion of their job, or are they excited about it? Do they feel overwhelmed? Like, dude, Dan, we got enough work here, like we're learning more, what is the
Yeah.
team's reactions?
Yeah, when we first started changing a lot of technology, it was very much that offensive. Everybody was worried about what was going on, concerns about the implications. Does this mean we're cutting our team? Is that the reason why we're going this direction? I don't know it. I got to spend more time learning it. So my workflow, is kind of all over the place. And so, when we first started making a lot of changes about 6 or 7 years ago in the tools that we were using, we learned very, very quickly that was not just coming back and saying, great, let's jump into it. This is going to replace this process. Let's go. People aren't comfortable with that. And I think it's not just because people are leery that the tool's not going to work out. They already have really busy schedules. And so you have to be very mindful of that in the implementation process and very careful to communicate the right functionality of how we go through it. And now we're in a process where everything gets a very strategic timeline in how we navigate through it. We have a lot, our investigatory process is, 2 to 3 months, depending on the application. Sometimes it's a year, on how before we really start rolling it out. then it's SOPs, then it's, training and coaching and teaching, then it's timelines and due dates. And it feels like it takes a long time to get to things, but I think it helps adoption quite a bit more when you're very strategic with the timeline.
And I'm sure the team appreciates that, right? I mean, that you're not moving too fast and throwing things at them that they just feel like then they're suffocating.
Yeah, that is 1000% the truth. I mean, we are very clear with our team that change is inevitable. In the kind of the underlying kind of philosophy we've always had here is if we're not changing, something's wrong. Because the space we're in is changing constantly and has been for a really long time. And so as long as we can control that change to where it's not so rampant or so disorganized, people feel a lot more confident in the direction you're going, and they feel a lot more satisfied, especially when they have ability to learn and grow, and there's patience in the process before it really starts to create a big shift in their lives.
Yeah. So I'd like to get into the weeds a little bit because everybody talks about what is practical application right
Yeah.
now in real world use cases. Is there a tangible example where you guys have tested AI internally? What worked, what didn't? Was it worth all those pain points and headaches and probably a few sleepless nights?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest benefit that we've seen so far from a lot of the tools we've tested is been on the communication and documentation process. I know that feels like a little cliche for a lot of people, but I will say, I mean, accountants in general believe and love to follow process as much as possible, but they don't love creating process. In some cases to get there, but once they have it, they're great and they're comfortable and they're confident with it. And so that's one thing that we've really focused heavily on this year is really shifting in that mindset of, okay, great, we're going to use it to document it, to organize it, to standardize it, so the language and the tone is the exact same way across the board. And from there, we're advancing it into other features for research and for people finding things within our internal wiki to be able to gather details and things for their own projects or their own processes that they're working on. But outside of that, we have worked with it very heavily to build Google Scripts and to use it from that side of things for automation when it comes to moving data from one spreadsheet to another or organizing it. That has probably been some of the most enjoyable parts of working with it, because now that we have the ability to use much more natural language in communicating with AI, you can talk to it more to be able to get it to do and adjust to the things that you want, versus having to know this perfect organized script of how to be able to get all the outputs that you're looking for. And that the ability to test it now is so much easier than it was, even a year ago. And so those have been really, really fun to kind of see the benefits that have come from that and the experiences that our team's been able to dive deeper into it as well.
So a lot of that sounds like an operator's dream, but I'm curious, does the team see how much value? You at a COO level is a different
Yeah.
lens, right? Does the team see the value of that as well?
Very, very much so when it comes to the output that they get from it and from the process that goes along with it. That I think is, to your point, that's one of the hardest parts of meshing the operator's dream with the people who are living and breathing inside the system.
Yeah.
Helping them to be able to, and that's usually where we start in our training process and communication, is what the end result is going to be, and then we work back from it. That again is a learning curve that we had to go through, as sometimes it's not the most effective to start with step one and start moving through it. It's what are we trying to get to and how is it going to replace, and what's the story and the dialogue that we're creating around that to get to our net result. People are much more comfortable when they know what it's going to be changing and why it's going to be changing and how it's going to be getting better from it. And so that's been a big part of it. But also too, when it comes to some of the more complex pieces of prompt engineering for Google Scripts, or building out really intricate communication or worksheets or things like that, we usually work on that together from a team setting perspective as well too. So it's not one person trying to figure it out on their own. It's someone who's very comfortable and confident with it, working with them to be able to help them navigate and learn how to communicate with it to be able to get its net result. And so it's still a journey for sure to get there, but it's definitely moving in the right direction.
And those wins make them more confident, right, in the future for the next
Absolutely.
experiment, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's the hardest part in a lot of cases with it too, as an operator or as a firm owner or a firm leader, like you have to be constantly reminding your team on why we need to be using it and the benefit that goes along with it. And if you decide to use something like a wiki or some other, database to be able to pull information out of it, you're constantly reminding them the benefit that goes through it and showing them potentially how they can search or how they can navigate through it, because people just naturally don't fall into that mindset of, oh, it's here, like me go through this, oh, these are the types of questions I should ask. And so helping to be able to continue to reiterate that, I think, helps quite a bit in that process as well.
It's great. You've, it sounds like you've perfected this process quite a little bit. I love it.
We're trying for sure.
You could start a master class on this subject, man. So this year you joined as an advisor for AICPA Startup Accelerator Program. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for the time that you volunteer and coaching those founders. And I know that you sit on some various client advisory boards for some of the tech companies that you guys work with. That's very generous of you, and that's a lot of time that you're dedicating to all of these tech companies and founders. I'm curious what you get out of it.
Yeah, I get asked this a lot. And I part of it, honestly, is I absolutely love um, working with both sides. I love working with the end user. I love working with the platform piece, I think the reason why I really enjoy it is I try to look at it from three different lenses when I'm interacting with them, and oftentimes I feel like we get to be a part of the journey a lot more, which we've seen some great success with some of the feedback we've given to where it's changed product or it's impacted it very heavily and where it's going. But I try to look at it from the applications lens, from my own as an operator in my firm, and from my employees' perspective, and then also from the customer piece. And I feel if we can at least align those in some aspect, everybody wins. And I think as a practitioner who's in the middle, of course, my always net result is make my life easier and faster and more efficient so that I can be able to do my job better. But that's not always the same alignment from our customers' perspective. Sometimes our customers want different levels of detail and they want more information. And sometimes the application can't do it to a certain extent. And so, or they have a different vision of where they're going. And so when we try to align those, or at least when I try to communicate that alignment aspect of things, or my where I see the shift that's happening in the space as well, I think it ends up being a win for all of us from that side of things. But and I'll say a little bit for me, I'm partially addicted to it as well too. I really like being in the room with really smart people. I learn so much from them as a part of just like whether it's learning how to lead or whether it's kind of learning about where their direction is going and the innovation they're doing, or just being connected to such brilliant people. I mean, it's exciting to be able to be in that same room.
And you're probably seeing some weak signals early on that others who maybe aren't as active probably miss out on until it's a little later in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a few conversations that I mean, there's a handful of applications that we've been working with on, AI for the last couple of years in different facets that they've been going through with it. And it's been interesting to be able to interact with them as they've gone throughout their journey. It's helped us to know when to leverage the immediate change in that process as well too. And so I feel like we've had a little bit of the inside track on those kind of things, but also kind of that ability to maybe navigate through some of the clunkiness of learning the process, because we were able to start sooner in educating our team and working through each of those pieces, whereas we may not have had that had we not been in those same rooms.
Yeah. Or have there been any standout solutions that have really caught your eye that or you're interested in, or I guess probably don't name if they were flops that you saw, but maybe some standouts.
Definitely. I will say this: the one when it comes to the flop piece, I think one of the parts that where I think the softwares and the end user don't align the best on, and I wish that there could be a cleaner balance with it, is especially when it comes to AI, the end user and the accountant is always worried about the confidence of what's going on with the product. Is if you're giving me AI, like how comfortable are you actually in that being 100% accurate, or is this just a really good suggestion as a part of that process? And so giving that feedback, or showing a confidence rating from the application side to the end user or to the accountant, goes miles in when it comes to people feeling comfortable and being more willing to adopt in the journey. If not, there's so much lack of trust in that piece, because there's like, I don't know what it is that you're trying to do and how you're navigating through it. And so like, that's one of the areas that I feel like a lot of applications miss in that process of the tools they're creating, is they don't show that visualization really, really well, to be able to help customers feel more comfortable. It's always just that, well, trust me, and we'll get there. And I mean, accountants' policy's always been trust but verify. I think that's one of the pieces that we hold very true to our chest, and that verification is critical, and our customers expect us to do it too. And so that's definitely one of my feedback for all the applications and tools out there. But I will say right now, I think there's a lot of really cool, unique things coming from a lot of different spaces. Intuit just dropped a bunch of different changes the beginning of this month, where they, really came out with this whole agent expectation on the bank feed and bringing in data and information. And there's a little bit of work, of course. It's in the early stages of what's going on with it, but the direction and the idea around it is really unique, and it's really exciting. Kind of along the same lines, Keeper is in AI, or is in beta testing for their AI for bank feeds, which is really unique on that side, to have that as a part of a closed management workflow and development from those those side of things. Bill has been dabbling in it for quite a while on reading and extracting information faster and more accurate. Ramp just dropped just released their beta opportunity for people actually having almost your approvals go through their agent experience, to be able to kind of navigate through it, as long as the policies and outlines are written in a really clean format. And so all those kind of things, I think, are huge opportunities for our customers and for ourselves to be able to help get through things better. I just watched the video again this morning on ramps, and it even gives you recommendations on how to improve your policy. If your policy is maybe not as efficient as it should be, or as accurate as it should be. And so I think those are the kind of things that we should expect to kind of start expecting from all these applications to produce, is the ability to not only do the work, but also give recommendations on how it can improve, to get a better experience for you, the end user, but also for just everybody that's touching the system across the board.
And you touched on so many important pieces there, but I want to get into a bit on the client side. So first, when you're talking about like the example with Ramp or Bill, when you're thinking about it from the client, and this new, it's popping up everywhere, embedded finance. And so now if the client is seeing from the tech something before you even have the conversation with them or have talked with them, or that before you even saw it, how does that change the relationship?
Yeah, it changes the relationship very quickly. I think that's when we first started. I think the part that I kind of liken this to is when we first started using applications, or 10 or so years ago, we had to listen to our clients for feedback on what they liked or what they didn't like, or new customers that were coming in that were referencing a new tool that we'd never seen or never touched before. We had to be willing to listen to understand what the potential benefit was from it, and was it the right application or was it the wrong application for us to be able to suggest to them. We're in the kind of that same boat again right now, where there's so much changing so quickly that if someone comes in with a new tool, or they're testing a new feature in an application that we haven't started testing with, or haven't gotten kind of a widespread experience with it, we have to dive in very, very quickly to get very comfortable and very familiar, because everybody is moving in that direction. Everybody's moving very, very fast. And so being ahead of it in that space and having good communication with the clients in that process, I think helps a lot. But also sometimes I think this is where people get the biggest fear in what this means in the potential replacement aspect, because we don't have time to study or learn. How do we navigate? Is it taking a role or not? And how do I vet to make sure it's accurate or it's not? But I will say this, the part that's really good about it is there's so much out in the accounting community right now that people are trying to keep people aware of what's changing rapidly. There's always resources out there very quickly. If you don't have the time to be able to discover it on your own, there's enough people in the community who probably have touched it that you can get some good, honest feedback on it, to be able to help you navigate through the process a little bit easier.
You've been tuned in to AI Native Accounting, powered by Digits, the world's first autonomous general ledger. Unlock automation for bookkeeping, reporting, client collaboration, and more. Let Digits handle the tedium so you can focus on high-impact client services. See why AI Native Accounting starts with Digits. Try it for free today at digits.com.
Still staying on that thread with the clients. So how do you balance automation with the human side of your service delivery, specifically around like the client delivery aspect and communication with them? What are you hearing from clients too? Are they wanting you to use more AI? Do they have any concerns about their data being accessed by these kinds of systems?
The data security, I think, is one of the biggest concerns that we hear about all the time, but also it's one of the biggest concerns we've heard about for quite a while as technology is becoming much more critical in their workflows. That being said, I think people are a little bit more comfortable now than they ever have been before on trusting kind of the expectation of the application, because they, especially if it's an older, what I mean by an older brand is a brand that's been around for a long time that has a history of consistency and accuracy and confidence. I mean, this is where I think like Intuit and Bill, for example, two great examples, like they have a really long track record of security. They have a really long track record of providing confidence in the product and the delivery. So customers are usually a lot more comfortable trusting them versus a brand new application they've never heard of, versus, something that popped up maybe last week and, in a Y Combinator type situation there. And so knowing that about the applications, I think helps quite a bit in being able to talk with your clients in the right way, and the right format. That being said, I think one of the parts for me that we had to set up for our own firm is we had to kind of create our own boundaries on how we felt like security needed to be treated for our customers. Where were there potential vulnerabilities for us, especially when it comes to situations where these applications are just tools, right? In a lot of cases, it's the user is where the liability usually falls into place. And so we've had to kind of set those boundaries for our own firm on where we draw the line on what we will be willing to do or what we won't be willing to do, or if we are willing to use a tool or not for that security purpose. And so I think that's something that people really need to be thinking heavily about as well too. I don't think that we have to, I don't think, firms should be really worried about going, heavy and deep into every legality of what's going on with it. A lot of the larger firms have to do that just because there's so many customers and so many legal requirements they have to go through. But I think you should at least know what you should be looking for when it comes to security. I mean, simple enough, like, where are they at on their plan for a SOC audit? Like, what's the initial, kind of approach with that? Have they done it, or are they going through it? What's the strategy there? Where is their data stored? Like, just kind of understanding those things. Like, that gives, when you know that as a firm, it gives you the ability to have a good conversation with your clients around their data and that security aspect. But I think also to the same point too, it's helping your customers to understand that the tools are always going to be there going forward. That it's not going to be like it used to be, where you could mail a packet of receipts or take pictures just as a standalone and email them in bulk to someone. Like, technology is changing to, a lot quicker to be able to require people to be a little bit more involved, or to be able to hopefully fall into some of the automations a little bit faster, so we don't fall behind.
Yeah, we don't want to bring the shoebox back.
Yeah, very much so.
Is there anything that is a hard no for you when it comes to deploying AI in a practice area?
Ooh, that's a really good question. For me, it really comes into how are you using my customers' data, and how is that being navigated in the process? And really for me in that piece, it's, are you storing this information asynchronously? Where are you putting the data as a whole? From that side of things as well, if you're using our information, it's being stored in certain places, like, are you using the customer's information for the rest of your clients' kind of generative AI experience, or is it unique? Is it stored within that environment? Is it going out on the open web? Like, those are the conversations that every firm should be asking the application that they work with, that, is offering AI or not, is, where is my data? And who's it being shared with? And especially from our customer's perspective, because there are situations where you have clients who have to fall under certain security measures. So it's HIPAA compliance or something along those lines. Like you have to be aware of where that data is. If not, you put yourself and your customer at risk.
Did you guys internally create like a due diligence checklist, or did you like bring in an IT firm, or how do you handle
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, we partnered with an IT firm to help build out our internal policies. And the reason why we did that was because they're being fully virtual as an organization. Like you have to think about the connections that each of your employees have to the networks that they're in as well, and how that security measure may fall into or impact on the applications that you're working with. And so we partnered in that space so that they could think about some of those more complicated issues versus us coming in and saying, hey, we know that our customers' data is really important to make sure we're protected. How can we make sure that we're covering it from A to Z versus just somewhere in the middle that we're balancing the visualization? And I think we're a little bit overkill on what we need, but I think it's also going to be helpful as we continue to grow and also as technology continues to change.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. A lot of times when I'm speaking and people say, well, we don't have the talent, we don't even know where to start on that. It's like, well, you don't have to. There's tons of resources out there. Hire a consultant or an SME in that area. Don't try to boil the ocean and do everything yourself. So it doesn't make
Oh,
sense.
absolutely. And there's so many free samples or free templates that are out there. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it's also one of those things where it's not a bad thing to ask your under your paid subscription of some AI tool to like give you a sample of something
Mhm.
that you should be thinking or considering with it, and then compare that with other people or ask your community. There's always someone who's willing to share.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you to put your futurist hat on, get the crystal ball out, and let's like look at some fun forecasting here. So, um, what are you watching most closely in AI right now? Is it agentic AI? Is it co-pilots? Is it predictive or prescriptive analytics? Like, what are you excited about and thinking that's going to be a game changer for IgniteSpot?
It's a really, really good question. I think that from my side of things, I'm looking much more at the agentic experience, and the reason why is I think that's where we have the opportunity to cut out a lot of the parts of our interaction with our clients that they don't love. It's the fetching, it's the gathering, it's the documentation, it's the assumptions on where things should be posted, and or the how to navigate the recommendation with it. I think those are going to be some of the biggest helpmeets for firms to be able to get in and to learn very, very quickly. I think also too that's where we can really start getting that kind of next level time to be able to start adding much more value to our clients. I think the analytics side is the next part for me in that piece where there's just so much data that it's really hard to be able to explain to everybody in your or teach everybody in your organization how to process in a way of being able to think outside of just a normal accountant rhythm when it comes to forecasting or when it comes to strategic initiatives or deeper conversations. And so those are probably the two most areas that I'm most interested in understanding and learning from and kind of seeing where the spaces go into, because I think there's the most opportunity in those spaces to add the most value for a customer interaction.
Mm. Do you think that AI will change the way that firms price or package their services?
I definitely do. I think I think we're going to see something very similar to the way it was about 10 years ago when apps became a really interesting part of the engagement. And that was more of the customers will probably be paying the accountants or the firm's services, or paying for this firm to manage a lot of those experiences. And so you'll be transitioning less from actually doing the physical transactions to managing the system as a whole and how it's navigating through all the processes and data, data sets that you have set up. I also think there's going to be a requirement for the firms to be more of those engineer type environments where it's building the workflows for data to be able to communicate back and forth or to get better quality information. And so I think it's definitely going to shift the experience that our customers are going to have with the firms. And I also think it's firms are going to have to start thinking much more about the value that's associated with it and especially the cost to use the tools. Some tools are very reasonably priced in some cases, and some tools are very, very expensive. And so you're going to have to navigate that very heavily when it comes to pricing out your services.
What role do you think humans will always play in accounting that will not be automated?
I think that I think the when it comes to truly understanding the human need, and being able to reason, being able to think about the vision and the strategy, and really the emotional impact of what happens in making a decision for a business. Um, Technology, I believe, will always be able to do a good job enhancing with data and with information or following a process to a specific piece. But I think where we as accountants or consultants become much more valuable to our clients is being able to say, here's all the data and here's all the information. Now, here's the things in the vision and the strategy that you want to accomplish. Great. Now, how do we mesh those two pieces together to get you where you want to go? Or how do we make the adjustments to be able to achieve what you're looking for? And that's really where I think the human is going to have the best opportunity in the relationship overall, is really shifting that process and really shifting into that mindset of beyond just the transaction to how can the data and the system as a whole help to get to that strategic vision that entrepreneur has.
So that kind of leads to my next futurist question is, and not to stereotype accountants, we love accountants,
Yeah.
but what is the biggest mindset shift needed to prepare them for? I always laugh like nowadays when people are talking 5, 10 years out. I'm like, we have no idea what it's going to be like by then, and things are changing so fast. So in reality, we're thinking in like 18 to 24 months. But
Yeah.
if you do look 5 years out, what is the biggest mindset shift that just generally speaking, accountants, you just facepalm when you hear it and you're like, oh my gosh, you have to change this?
Yeah. I think the biggest, the one of the biggest snags that I think specifically in the financial accounting space,
Mm-hmm.
which is of course the area that I live in the most, is we have to think beyond the transaction and the reconciliation. That's where I think most accountants get, specifically in the financial side, get really stuck. That is my product. That's my net result. This is how we get to all that constructive information. I think the other part with it too is also believing that everybody has to be unique with every transaction. And I think for me, that's where a lot of accountants get hung up on their relationship with their clients, is they're so worried about which of the chart of accounts line items that everything has to go in to make sure that it tells this or meshes specifically to how the client feels. And I'm not saying ignore that in any way, shape, or form, but also to the same point, there's times when a standardized workflow is actually better for you to give value to the customer. It cuts down on chasing and follows ups and all these different conversations. It gives you more time to do these other things. And so I think on the financial side, that's going to be one big hit. On the audit side, I think one of the bigger parts is going to be the shift of, instead of doing small sample sizes, being able to understand how these technologies and tools can review every transaction,
Full data set. Yeah.
and massively shift that data set, and changing the mindset around what makes sense to you from a sample, and how you can adjust that to where it's now we're reviewing everything. What are the questions I want to know about the whole thing? And then on the tax side, I think one of the big benefits one of the biggest shifts that's going to happen across the board is the tax code is so massive in so many different ways that accountants, I think, become very comfortable with specific ways of navigating with their clients through experiences. There's a lot of other opportunity out there to be able to either save your clients or create a better tax position for them, or be better prepared for a strategic 2 or 3 year vision down the road for that company. Those are the things that we're going to have to start thinking about and utilizing these tools, and really defining how to get to that net result that the customer's looking for, versus this is how I've always done it and this is where I'm safe with. Because there's plenty of other safe ways across the board with all of these, that it's not putting anybody at risk. It's just knowing how to ask it the right questions and how to verify it to make sure that it is the safest bet and the most strategic bet for that client.
Yeah. All right. Wild guess. Again, 5 years from now, what is going to be completely different at Ignite Spot than it is today?
Ooh, um, That's a really, really, really good question. Um, I think one of the biggest shifts that we're going to see, I mean, is just how we interact from a communication perspective. And what I mean by that is, right now we've made a pretty big shift to try to meet our clients where they're at, in their world and in their life, and so that sometimes requires you to have Slack and email and text message and phone calls and all these other things that you have to navigate through. I think there's going to come a point in time to where that can shift into a centralized place, to where you're, instead of having to think about all those pieces, the clients can still get the information in the way that they best absorb it. But as a firm, you don't have to be as stressed about having that information everywhere, so that you can be able to process it quicker and you can be able to help navigate through it faster. But I also think that the conversation is going to have to shift heavily. That value driven outside of the transaction is going to still be one of the most critical shifts that every accounting firm is going to have to adopt.
Yeah, and a good way for you guys to differentiate for sure.
Yeah, very much so.
So, rapid fire round. What is your favorite AI tool that is not accounting related that you use for personal life?
Ooh, I will say that, to that point, I mean, honestly, I use my my wife, my kids actually, and my wife joke about this, that my Chat GPT is actually my best friend. Which, and the reason why is I ask it so many questions, so many odd things. I mean, I chat with it to get ideas in one place or to standardize things. I mean, I use it to verify the vitamin regimen that I take on a regular basis. I work with it quite a bit, and I've kind of built it into that really, really nice assistant. And so I would say that's probably the biggest one right now that I've spent a lot of time and energy into.
It's a good foundation one. That's good.
Definitely.
What's the worst accounting or tech buzzword that you would be thrilled if you didn't hear it for the rest of 2025?
Oh my gosh, there are so many of those. I will say the one that I wish, and it's not that I wish it would go away, but I wish that there was a cleaner definition, and that's the idea around agentic or agent. Everybody has their own definition of what agentic is, or what, what an agent is from that perspective. And so it's honestly one of the most complicated parts of understanding where all these apps are going, is they use that term, so both those terms, in such a loose format. For them it's agentic because there's a thing that's going through and doing something. And it's like, that's RPA. That's been around for 30 years. Like, that's not agentic in any way, shape, or form. You told it to follow a process. Like, I think those are probably the two things that I would absolutely love to see a true, like, this is actually what you have to follow in order to be able to be called agentic or to be a true agent. It's not so much on a rigorous A plus B plus C equals D type situation. It's actually thinking, it's interacting, it's going through that. It has structure, but it also requires more than just a feeling or just a step process to go through it.
Fair enough. If AI wrote your job description today, what would be the weirdest thing that it would have to include that you do?
I think I think mine would have to include something around something around communication when it comes to interacting with clients. I think I get looped in and attached to every single thing, it feels like, within our firm that doesn't necessarily require me or involve me, and I've had to learn to absorb the information very, very quickly to make sure I'm not missing something, and then push it back out. And so it'd probably have to be something really, really along those lines of just the amount of information we have to absorb to be able to make sure that the system's moving in a good way, whether you need to know it or whether you don't.
It'll make the team appreciate you just that much more.
Very much so.
Yeah. So anyone who knows Dan knows that he loves to rock a good Mellon hat. And if you're not familiar with the Mellon brand, it's got quite the cult following, my family included. And I got my first Dan Mellon hat for myself for Mother's Day. My daughter and husband got it for me this year because I always had to steal theirs. So what's your favorite color combo of your Mellon hats?
Ooh, I have probably I've had a few for quite a while. My favorite one for the longest time was a tan hat, the kind of the main part, and then it was a black brim. That was probably just the contrast between the tan and the black was really, really awesome. I got one similar to the one you have, which I think is really fun. I like the kind of the light blue and the kind of almost off-white color and how they mesh together. But I got a new one last week that I showed it to my wife when they just barely dropped it, and she's like, "You suck so bad, like you got to stop buying these." But it's almost like,
what I say.
yeah, no, yeah. It's kind of it has like a sage brim, like a light sage brim with a more of a tan frame around it, and I think it just looks really, really clean with everything, no matter what color you're wearing. So that's probably one of my favorite ones right now. Is the newest, but the tan and black is probably my all time go to.
We'll keep that one away from my husband. He doesn't need another one.
Definitely.
This has been fantastic. Dan, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all your insights. I think this transparency around operator realism is really critical to the overall broader conversation around AI. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in this area. And if you would like to deploy AI native accounting for your own firm, visit digits.com to explore today. Stay tuned for future episodes of the AI Native Accounting Podcast, which will be available on all of your favorite platforms for streaming. And until next time, stay curious and stay ahead.
You've been tuned in to AI Native Accounting, powered by Digits, the world's first autonomous general ledger. Unlock automation for bookkeeping, reporting, client collaboration, and more. Let Digits handle the tedium so you can focus on high-impact client services. See why AI Native Accounting starts with Digits. Try it for free today at digits.com.